Let me cover another review. Last week I said that I was in the middle of reading. I wasn't ready to review it yet, but I was in the middle of reading DC Legends. Rereading it technically. I'd read it once way back in the day. Didn't even remember everything that, all the ins and outs that had happened in it. But I reread it carefully and I finished it. And I gave away a little bit last week, what the gist of it is. This is the first crossover follow-up to Infinite Crisis. So in the 80s, when Crisis happened, just combined all of the different DC universes into one, at least for a time, and they needed some sort of sequel, so they came up with Legends, and they really got an incredible team. I mean, you got John Ostrander, Len Wein, John Byrne, Carl Kessel. There's a really great introduction from the editor in this version, in this edition here, the graphic novel, talking about it. And it's a big, heavy endeavor whenever you're going to draw that many heavy hitter characters from the DC universe into one story and give them all their own developed through line, plot development and whatnot. It takes careful writing, and John Ostrander really did do it quite well. Now, as I mentioned last week, the story is about Darkseid. He's on Apokolips, and he's got total order, what he calls it, which is just total bleak despair on Apokolips, and yet Earth has always eluded him in this. And it's the heroes of Earth, Superman, Captain Marvel, Batman, Green Lantern, and everybody their legend has always inspired the people to fight back and to stand up for liberty and so forth, and heroism and for, compassion and so forth. And that's always made Earth fall through his fingers. And so he hatches this plan to try to bring down the legends of the superheroes. And he commissions Glorious Godfrey. If you don't know Glorious Godfrey, you don't know your Jack Kirby and Apocalypse lore. Glorious Godfrey's the one, just briefly, he's got the power, sort of hypnotic power in his voice and whatnot. He goes to Earth under this guise of his character named G. Gordon Godfrey, and he starts speaking out against superheroes. It's kind of like, what's the name of that guy who wrote The Seduction of the Innocent back in the day? The psychologist talking about how they're bad for children and all this kind of stuff. And so G. Gordon Godfrey's there talking about how heroes are a problem. They're playing God in our world, and more people are hurt because of them and so forth. And because he's got this hypnotic, aspect to his voice, the masses start to agree with him. They start to turn on the superheroes. Now, right then and there, if you're paying attention to superhero media over the last 10 years, then you should be thinking, oh my gosh, you should be rolling your eyes. Enough with the stupid, do we even need superheroes kind of stories. They've been done to freaking death. James Gunn's going to do it again in his stupid Superman movie. Enough with the public wondering if we even need heroes, or turning on these heroes, and then there's a division, and then the heroes have to prove themselves. Enough. That's done to death, right? I am in full agreement with that. I hate that idea, the very concept now. However, we can't turn our backs on the original stories back in the day that actually did that well in a proper context, right? And as I mentioned before, the time for DC Legends, this was right after the Crisis had happened. DC universe is very different from Marvel. Marvel has a universe in which you can ask that question a little bit more, in terms of the public and the relationship to heroes and so forth. But DC had always been the hopeful universe. It had always been the ones where the heroes were always leading the people, always being true legends to the people. So if you're going to have a story at that time in which the DC universe tackles this issue, this story does it well by actually having G. Gordon or Glorious Godfrey there, sort of brainwashing the people. So it wasn't an organic thought from the people themselves. There weren't things that happened that actually made people, really wonder if the heroes are a good thing for us or not. This was some of the garbage that I hated about Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. You don't push that in the DC universe. It has to be done in a very key context in a very specific way if you're going to address it at all. And Legends does it well. If I could say anything critical about it, you do see it's given to you pretty much right up front that's Darkseid's ploy, and he's got certain mechanisms. Like in the first part of the story, Captain Marvel, Billy Batson, is fighting this big Macro Man, he's called, this big giant man from Apocalypse. And he's captured Captain Marvel in his grasp, and Captain Marvel says, well, you know, I can't get out of his grasp, but if I shrink down to Billy Batson, he could get out. So he says, Shazam, the lightning strikes, but the lightning triggers these explosions that he doesn't know are there in Macro Man's chest, and makes him fall over as though dead. So Captain Marvel's like, oh my gosh, I killed a man. I killed a villain. And he, you know, decides he can't be a hero anymore for a time because he was responsible for killing a villain. And that kind of ploy is a great ploy for these heroes, you know, but it's dragged out a little bit too far, I think, before it starts to become addressed and starts to become, you know, let's get a little momentum past that. And I think this is a product of it being sort of an issue by issue series. There are some tie-ins, you know, with other stories that give you a little bit more development, like the Justice League at the time and Firestorm at the time and so forth, give you a little bit more development of the story. But overall, it's done really well. I think it's just the episodic nature of it, where you have to keep revisiting and laying the groundwork for what had happened. So that drags on a little bit too far, I think, if I could say anything critical about it. But otherwise, I think it's just really solid. It's really great to revisit this time in the DC universe. Wonder Woman is first on the scene. In fact, Legends is the first time she really reveals herself globally to the world. And this is the George Perez Wonder Woman. You know, I reviewed Gods and Mortals a little while ago. In that, you know, she fights Decay, and she's on Boston television, and they know about her in Boston. But this marks her first appearance, you know, kind of worldwide, fighting these people. Here's her famous panel, her famous entrance scene there, and of course Guy Gardner checking her out from the back there. but really great. And you have Carl Kessel inks Wonder Woman. It's really good. I liked his work on the character as well. There's also a moment where Jason Todd as Robin has a really heroic moment in this story. He undergoes some really harrowing trials in DC Legends, and he has a very heroic moment at the end. And I think a lot of times we forget that Jason Todd was a really cool Robin before he became super bratty. A lot of people say that, oh, well, that was before the Crisis. He was a great character, but they changed it after the Crisis and tried to make him bratty. I don't think that's the case. I think it's a natural trajectory of the character. You know, Jason Todd, actually, I've been going through these graphic novels in order, according to a list I found on Reddit that looked pretty comprehensive at first glance, but they were missing a lot of graphic novels, which I think are just harder to find. Coming to me in the mail Monday, I actually finally found Batman Second Chances, which is the graphic novel. It's the compilation of the Jason Todd origin story after Crisis. So they had brought Jason Todd, he had his origin story, whatever, pre-Crisis, but post-Crisis, they you know, tell his origin story, putting him in the continuity there. And he's got a whole different background than Dick Grayson. I mean, Dick Grayson tragically lost his parents, but he had a loving family. He came from a very loving family. His parents, you know, supported him in every way, taught him and loved him. Jason Todd is an orphan. You know, he's out there being abused by gangs and whatnot, a street tough little punk, you know, trying to take the wheels off the Batmobile. So he's got a bit more of a background to overcome. And I think at first, though, we do forget that he was a great Robin. He was really, you know, Batman needed a new Robin. Nightwing was off doing his thing, and Batman needed a new Robin. And Jason Todd fit that bill quite well. But I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it just sort of organically happened. People blame it on post-Crisis. I think it was more organic than that too, though. That as he grew older, he just became a bit brattier because he did have that background. It made sense that he was going to be a little more rebellious and so forth. And I'm still against ever bringing him back. I think Jason Todd died. It was tragic, but he should have stayed dead. I know there are Red Hood aficionados now who would just, you know, just want to scream in my face for daring say that, but I don't like Jason Todd after they brought him back. I don't like the Red Hood story. It's like Damian Wayne. It's just enough. Get it out of here. They're annoying. I don't like those characters, but that's just me. But all that to say, classic Jason Todd does quite well in this book as well. And I'll read. I'm not going to give away the ending, but there's I won't even tell you what character says this, but there's a really great summation of kind of the point of the story that one character says in the end here. let me see if I can find it here to read it. What constitutes a legend? You know, the legends of these superheroes. What constitutes a legend? Is it powers and abilities beyond those of mortal men? Or is it a fighting heart that refuses to acknowledge defeat? For centuries beyond numbering, from the ancient campfires to the towering condominiums, man has relied on legends to hold back the night. Men call the, and so forth. But that idea, I don't want to read too much more in because he starts talking about who his character is and whatnot. But men rely on legends to hold back the night. It's what I've been saying about mythology, superheroes as mythology. These characters, this is the cultural work they do. They are heroes, hold back the night, right? They help us push back the night within ourselves. They inspire us to push back the night within culture if we're really listening to them in the right way. I was actually just writing a preface. You know, I'm reissuing my Heroic Inspirations book, reissuing it on Kindle. So it's going to be I'm reissuing it in parts too. So the first one's going to be just the DC Trinity, and that'll be out next month actually. In fact, I've got a second short story as part of my Objects of Desire series that's coming out actually this week. As soon as I get the cover art in, I'm going to release that on Kindle. But then in the next week or so, I'll be working on putting out the Heroic Inspirations, first part of that, which will be the DC Trinity. And I've revamped it, I've reworked it, I've put a lot more in, I've added a preface. And in the preface, I talk about that, how these heroes are there. The work that they do is to teach us. In fact, there's a great, oh shoot, do I still have it? Yeah, I still have it here. There's a great quote by Joseph Campbell that I use in that. Oh no, I don't have it on the, oh actually, yeah, I've got it in the Word file. There it is, okay. I think of mythology as the homeland of the muses, the inspirers of art, the inspirers of poetry. To see life as a poem and yourself participating in a poem is what the myth does for you. And that's so true. That's what the myth does for you. That's what mythology should inspire you to. That's what it goes for. So that's the review of Legends. Definitely recommend it. It's a good, solid DC story. If you're a DC fan, you definitely want that.